There is a silence every serious man eventually meets. It does not arrive with a warning. It arrives in pieces. A text that used to come daily now arrives every few weeks, then every few months. A friend who used to call without reason now calls only when he needs something. A name that used to fill your phone with notifications now appears mostly inside group threads. Brief, polite, distant. The dinners get harder to organize. The casual hangouts thin out. The check-ins evaporate. Nothing dramatic ever happens. There is no fight, no declaration, no goodbye. Just a slow contraction of contact that you slowly stop being able to ignore. This is the silence of the bad season. It usually happens when something inside your life is shifting in a direction other people did not sign up for. Maybe you lost the job. Maybe the money tightened. Maybe a health crisis arrived. Maybe a relationship collapsed. Maybe you simply stopped being the easy, generous, endlessly available version of yourself you used to perform for them. Whatever the trigger, the result is the same. Your phone gets quieter. Your social calendar gets thinner. Some faces, some voices, some names that you thought were permanent fixtures of your life become, suddenly, hard to reach. For a while, you tell yourself it is nothing. People are busy. Life is complicated. Everyone is going through something. You do not want to be paranoid. You do not want to be the bitter man who imagines slights where none exist. You give them every benefit of every doubt. You tell yourself the silence is coincidence. You tell yourself the lack of response is just the era we live in. You tell yourself that real friends do not need constant contact, that this is just a season, that they will reappear soon, that everything will return to normal once your circumstances improve. But underneath all of that storytelling, your nervous system already knows. It is reading the data faster than your conscious mind is willing to. It notices that there are people who never check on you the way you checked on them. It notices that there are people who only respond when you initiate. It notices that the warmth that used to feel automatic now feels conditional. It notices that certain friendships, when actually tested, do not behave like friendships at all. They behave like business arrangements that were never put on paper. Then one day, often in some ordinary moment, the truth lands without permission. You are sitting alone in your apartment, scrolling through your phone, looking at messages you have sent that never received replies, looking at conversations that died mid-thread, looking at names of people you used to consider close, and you feel something heavy settle in your chest that has been settling there in installments for months. The people you thought were your circle are not your circle. Some of them are something else. Some of them are something less. Some of them are, in the cold light of this moment, not really anything at all. There is a man at 34, sitting on his couch with a phone he is no longer expecting to ring. He has just gone through one of the hardest stretches of his life. Financial loss, family stress, health scare, the works. And during that stretch, the texture of his social life changed dramatically. Some people he barely knew showed up for him in ways he could not have imagined. Some people he had considered family disappeared in ways he could not have imagined either. The hierarchy of his relationships, the one he had assumed for years, has been quietly rewritten without his consent. He is not bitter, exactly. He is just disoriented. He keeps catching himself running old programs. He keeps wanting to call certain people, expecting certain responses, expecting certain energies, expecting certain forms of care. Each time he has to remind himself that the people he is imagining no longer exist in his life in the way he was assuming. The version of them he is reaching for was always partly fictional. The real version withdrew when his utility decreased, and he is only now updating his internal map to match what was always actually there. This is one of the most disorienting experiences a man can have. It is also one of the most clarifying, because the silence of the bad season, while painful, is finally honest. It tells you, without words, what no conversation ever could. It tells you who is real and who is convenient. It tells you who is rooted in you and who was rooted in your output. It tells you who would mourn your absence, and who would mostly miss what your absence cost them. If you have lived this exact silence in some chapter of your life, write "seen," because that silence is one of the most important teachers you will ever encounter. It is not cruelty, it is information, and the man who learns to read it correctly stops misreading his relationships for the rest of his life. There is a reason every culture, in some form, has a saying about how true friends reveal themselves in hard times. It is because the hard times do something no conversation can do. The hard times remove the easy benefits of being around you. Think about what casual friendship is, structurally. Two people who enjoy each other's presence under low-pressure conditions. They like the jokes, they like the energy, they like the shared interests, they like the time together. They are not necessarily lying when they call each other friends. Under those low-pressure conditions, the affection is genuine. It is real for what it is. The problem is not that the affection is fake. The problem is that the affection has only ever been tested under conditions where it costs nothing. Hard times rip the easiness out of the equation. Suddenly, being around you costs something. It costs time, because you cannot show up as the version that does all the social heavy lifting. It costs energy, because you cannot perform happiness on demand. It costs comfort, because your problems are now in the room with you, occupying space, demanding to be acknowledged. It costs flexibility, because you cannot drop everything and join the spontaneous plan when your life is consumed by something difficult. It costs the easy joy that the friendship was built on, because joy is harder to access while you are inside the storm. For some people, none of this is a problem. They were never relating to you for the easy joy in the first place. They were relating to you because they value who you are. They will adjust. They will sit with you in the harder atmosphere. They may be awkward. They may not always know what to say, but they will stay. Their nervous systems can tolerate the temporary cost of your bad season because there is a deeper investment underneath. For other people, the cost is immediately intolerable. They cannot articulate it that way. They will not say to themselves, "I do not want to be around him because he is no longer fun." They will tell themselves a different story. They are busy. They are stressed. They are going through their own things. They will get back to you when things calm down. They will reach out soon. They mean to call. They have been meaning to call. The story is always more flattering than the truth. The story protects their image of themselves. But the behavior, watched over months, tells the actual truth. The behavior says they were here for the easy version of you, and the harder version is too much. This is not necessarily evil, it is structural. Some friendships are built for sunshine. They will not survive the storm. That is the nature of those friendships. They are not pretending to be something else. You are the one who assumed they were. They have always been weather-dependent connections. You can grieve that, but you cannot accuse them of malice. They never promised, in any deep sense, anything different. You projected the deeper promise onto a structure that was never built to hold it. The man who understands this can take the sorting more calmly. He does not see the hard times as a betrayal. He sees them as a filtration system that he did not have to design. Life is doing it for him. People are revealing themselves without him having to interrogate them. He does not need to test anyone deliberately. The test is administering itself, and his only job is to pay attention. He watches. He notices who calls when there is no benefit to calling. He notices who shows up when there is nothing to receive. He notices who sends the small, unimpressive, unphotographable message just to remind him he is not alone. He notices who sits with him quietly in the moments where there is nothing useful to be done. He notices who does not flinch when he is sad, when he is angry, when he is unsure, when he is not at his best. He also notices who has gone quiet, who has become harder to reach, whose check-ins feel performative when they happen, whose energy he has to chase even to maintain a thread of contact, whose absence, when he is honest with himself, has become more present than their presence ever was. There is a man going through a serious illness, not the dramatic Hollywood kind, the slow, grinding, exhausting kind that drags on for many months. He is not able to be the host of his social circle anymore. He cannot organize the dinners. He cannot fund the events. He cannot drive the energy of the group. He is simply trying to survive each week, to maintain some dignity inside a body that has become uncooperative. And he watches, with strange detachment, as his social world rearranges itself around his diminished function. Some people disappear almost completely. Others come closer than they ever had before. The map he carried in his head about who was important and who was peripheral is, by the end of that year, completely rewritten. And the new map, while painful to draw, turns out to be the most accurate map of his social life he has ever had. He never asked for the test. The test came on its own. His only job was not to flinch from the data. This is what hard times do. They produce a kind of social honesty that cannot be manufactured in any other way. The people who are real reveal themselves. The people who were never quite there expose themselves through their absence. You do not have to confront anyone. You do not have to argue with anyone. You do not have to interrogate anyone. You simply have to watch and remember. What you write into your memory during the hard times becomes the most accurate ledger you will ever have of who is actually in your life. To stop being naive, it helps to understand, structurally, why some people vanish during hard times. It is rarely because they hate you. Hate is too active. Hate requires investment. Most of the people who vanish during your hard times do not hate you. They just no longer find you worth the cost. There are several different reasons people disappear, and they are worth seeing clearly. Some people vanish because they only ever liked the upside of you. The success, the energy, the fun, the status, the events, the advantages they got from being around you. When the upside contracts, their interest contracts proportionally. They are not even being malicious. Their attachment to you was never separate from the benefits of the attachment. When the benefits decrease, the attachment naturally weakens. They drift away as a function of pure interest calculus, not betrayal. They may not even fully realize they are doing it. They are just following the natural pull of where their attention finds reward. Some people vanish because your hard times remind them of vulnerabilities they have not faced in themselves. They cannot watch your struggle without their own anxiety being activated, so they avoid you. Not because they do not care about you, because watching you forces them to feel things they have spent their life avoiding. They tell themselves they need to focus on themselves right now. They tell themselves they cannot take on extra weight. The truth is that your struggle is showing them their own unprocessed fear, and the easiest way to escape that mirror is to stop standing in front of it. Some people vanish because they have spent years using you as a kind of emotional infrastructure. You were the one who absorbed their problems. You were the one who solved things. You were the one who managed the difficult moments. When you yourself need that kind of presence, they discover that they do not have it to give. They were never reciprocal. They were dependent. And dependents do not transform into caregivers overnight, even when the person they depend on needs care. They simply withdraw because the dynamic they were used to is no longer available, and they do not know what to do with you in any other shape. Some people vanish because they are quietly competitive with you. They were warm during the seasons when they could see your imperfections, your struggles, your half-built life. The moment you start moving in a direction that threatens to surpass them in some dimension, their warmth contracts. And during your hard times, oddly, their warmth often contracts as well, because in the hard times, you are also being shaped, being clarified, being deepened. They sense, without being able to articulate it, that the man emerging from your hard season is going to be heavier than the one they used to know. Their nervous system is already preparing for the loss of leverage that change implies. They withdraw preemptively. Some people vanish for simple, banal reasons. Their own lives are in disorder. Their own struggles are consuming them. Their bandwidth is too small to include the bandwidth of others. These are not necessarily fake friends. These are real friends who are temporarily incapable of showing up. It is important not to lump them into the same category as the deliberate vanishers. Time will usually reveal which is which. Real friends in temporary incapacity will return when their lives stabilize, often with sincere acknowledgement that they were not there when you needed them. The other categories will return only when you have something worth taking again, and the return will not be accompanied by any reckoning with their absence. This is one of the cleanest distinctions you can keep in mind. Real friends in temporary incapacity will, when they return, eventually mention the absence themselves. They will own it. They will say something like, "I know I was not there when you were going through that, and I am sorry. I want to do better." You may forgive them or not, depending on the depth of the failure, but their willingness to name it tells you something about the bond. Fake friends, the ones who vanished because the cost-benefit equation tilted, will, when they return, behave as if no absence ever occurred. They will pick up where the relationship left off, often when something new of yours has become attractive again. They will not name the months or years of silence. They will not acknowledge what their absence cost you. They will simply slide back in, as if the disappearance was a small, unremarkable detail, rather than the defining feature of how they actually feel about you. This is the test that almost never fails. Pay attention to what is said and not said when they return. The one who acknowledges is showing you a relationship. The one who does not acknowledge is showing you a transaction with no contract. There is a strange, almost predictable pattern that follows the silence of the bad season. Years pass. Your life rebuilds. The financial pressure eases. The health stabilizes. The career recovers. The relationships in your inner circle deepen. The work you have been doing in private begins to show up in public. People begin to notice that you look different, sound different, present yourself differently. The signals of recovery and ascent become visible, and almost on cue, the people who disappeared during the bad season begin to reappear. It is one of the strangest experiences a man can have. A name you had not heard from in 2, 3, sometimes 5 years suddenly resurfaces. A text arrives that begins, "Hey, it's been so long, how have you been?" As if no time had passed, as if the silence had been mutual, as if there were nothing to explain. They want to grab coffee. They want to catch up. They want to see what you're up to these days. They have a project they think you would be perfect for. They have a person they want to introduce you to. They have an opportunity. They have a need. They have noticed your visibility and have decided, often unconsciously, that it is time to renegotiate access to you. You stand there with this message in your hand and feel a strange wave move through your body. Part of you wants to believe them. Part of you remembers very clearly where they were when you needed them. Part of you wonders if it would be petty to bring up the absence. Part of you wonders if perhaps they have changed, if perhaps this is your chance to repair something, if perhaps you are being too hard on them. This is one of the most dangerous moments in a man's social life. It is the moment where a man either removes the lesson or unlearns it. Most men, in this moment, betray themselves. They are flattered by the return. They are tired of holding the resentment. They are unsure if they are being unreasonable. They tell themselves that life is short, that people deserve second chances, that they themselves are not perfect, that maybe the past is the past. So they respond warmly. They schedule the coffee. They show up. They give the returning person the kind of access they used to give before the silence began. They reintegrate them. And, almost without exception, within a few months, the same dynamic reasserts itself. The returnee uses what they came for, then receded again the next time the weather inside your life changes. The pattern is so predictable that it stops being a coincidence and starts being a law. People who relate to you primarily through your utility will keep cycling. They will appear when you have something to offer. They will disappear when you do not. They will reappear when you do again. The same person in the same role, doing the same thing, expecting to be received the same way. The cycle is not random, it is functional. They are not lying when they tell themselves they care about you. They simply only have access to that feeling when your output is high enough to keep their interest activated. A man with a strong identity can see this clearly without becoming bitter. He does not need to lecture them. He does not need to confront them. He does not need to write the dramatic message about how disappointed he is. He simply needs to remember, and to remember in a way that affects the access he grants in this new chapter. Because Machiavelli observed long ago that men are quick to be deceived by present necessity source. When the returnee returns, the necessity they are responding to is not their love for you, it is their interest in what your new chapter can do for them. They are not lying about being glad to see you. They are simply not aware of why they are glad. You can be glad to see them too. You can take the coffee if you want. You can have the conversation. You can even, in some cases, allow some renewed contact. But the contact you allow should be calibrated to who they actually are, not to who you used to believe they were. Their relationship cannot be reset to its previous level by their reappearance. It can only be set at the level their actual behavior has earned. This is the deepest answer to the question of what to do when fake friends return. You do not have to be cruel. You do not have to be confrontational. You do not have to write a manifesto. You do not have to perform your wisdom for them. You only have to do one quiet thing. You have to not pretend. You have to remember. You have to give them precisely the level of access that their pattern has demonstrated, and not 1 degree more. If they want to be cordial, be cordial. If they want to be in a group together, be in the group. If they want to occasionally chat, occasionally chat. But the deep access, the kind of access that includes the real you, the kind that includes your inner life, your real plans, your real opportunities, your real loyalty, that access is no longer in the budget. That access is reserved for the small, real circle that proved itself during the silence. This is not pettiness. This is accuracy. Before a man can hold this kind of accuracy, he has to deal with a particular trap inside himself. The trap is the hope that they were real. Most men, when they discover that their circle was not what they thought it was, do not respond by updating their map. They respond by trying to preserve the map. They invent reasons. They forgive too quickly. They reach out again to test if maybe the absence was an aberration. They tell themselves the story that things were just complicated. They keep the bond inflated in their own mind, because deflating it would require them to feel something they do not want to feel. The thing they do not want to feel is the loneliness of accurate accounting. If you really sit with the reality that some of the people you considered close were never close in the way you assumed, you have to feel the size of the gap that creates in your life. You have to feel that your inner circle was always smaller than your perceived inner circle. You have to feel that you have been spending energy on relationships that were not equivalent to your investment in them. You have to feel that some of the warmth you have lived inside was, in significant part, manufactured by your own projection. That feeling, even briefly entertained, is brutal. So most men flinch away from it. They keep the inflated map because it is, in some twisted way, less lonely than the accurate one, even if the inflated map keeps producing the same disappointments. Even if the people on the inflated map keep failing the tests. Even if the inflated map cost them, over and over, the same kind of pain. This is the identity trap. The man's sense of his own life is partly built on the size and warmth of his social network, and reducing that map feels like reducing himself. He confuses the number of relationships he claims with the substance of his life. He needs to believe he has a robust circle in order to keep believing he is the kind of man who deserves a robust circle. If he admits the circle is smaller, he worries he is admitting he is less than he had been pretending to be. This is upside down. The smaller, more accurate circle is not a verdict on your worth. It is, in many cases, simply a more accurate picture of the social ecology you actually inhabit. Most people, no matter how charming or kind or generous, do not develop deep loyal bonds with very many human beings in their lifetime. 3, 5, maybe 10, often fewer. Most of the people in any given person's phone are weather-dependent connections, situational acquaintances, or strategic associates. This is not a reflection of any deficiency in the person. It is a reflection of the nature of human bonding. Deep loyalty is rare because deep loyalty is expensive to maintain, and most people do not have the bandwidth, the structure, or the temperament to sustain more than a handful of those bonds. So when you find yourself, after a hard season, with a smaller real circle than you imagined, you have not been singled out for some social misfortune. You have simply, finally, seen the size of the actual loyal bonds in your life. That number is rarely as large as the social media impression suggested. It is rarely as large as you would have estimated before you were tested. It is almost always smaller than you hoped, and almost always exactly the right size to focus on. There is a man at 40 who sits with his journal one quiet evening and lists, in plain writing, the names of the people who would mourn him deeply if he died tomorrow. Not the people who would post about him, not the people who would attend the funeral, not the people who would say the right things in his name, the people whose lives would be structurally diminished by his absence, the people for whom the loss would not be performative, the people who would carry his absence in their bones for years. The list is small. He had once assumed it would be larger. He is surprised by how short it is. But as he sits with it, something shifts in him. He realizes that the list is small, not because his life is small, but because the kind of loyalty he is describing is rare. And the names on his list are not casual. They are the few human beings who have, over time, demonstrated that they are truly bonded to him. They are also, he notices with some surprise, not the people he had been performing his life for. Several of them are quiet, unflashy, unimportant by the world's metrics. None of them have ever asked him for anything proportional to what they have given him. They are, in some sense, the real ones. After that night, he stops trying to maintain the inflated map. He still treats his wider acquaintances with warmth and respect. He still shows up at the events. He still answers messages politely. He does not become a hermit. He simply stops investing the deepest part of himself in people who have not earned a place on the short list. He stops giving his inner life to a wide audience. He concentrates it, and in concentrating, he finds something he had been missing for years. He finds depth. Their relationships on the shortlist, when fed his more focused attention, deepen even further. The wider circles, when fed less of his desperate availability, become more pleasant precisely because they are now appropriately calibrated. He is not asking too much of casual friends. He is not giving too much to shallow contacts. He is no longer pretending that his social life is larger than it is, so he is no longer disappointed when it behaves like what it has always been. This is the integration of the lesson. The hope that they were real is replaced with the satisfaction of knowing who actually is. The map shrinks, but the territory becomes more livable. Once a man has seen all this, he faces a practical question. How does he behave going forward? He still has to live in the world. He still has to attend the events. He still has to encounter, in business and family and community, people who fall into all of these categories. He cannot pretend forever that they do not exist. He has to find a way to relate to them honestly, without either being cruel or being naive. This is one of the most underappreciated skills of a mature man, the skill of allowing without pretending. He allows the presence of these people in his life. He does not pretend the relationship is something it is not. He shakes their hand at the gathering. He laughs at the appropriate jokes. He answers their occasional message politely. He behaves like a civilized man. If they invite him into a casual context, he can sometimes accept. If they congratulate him on something, he can accept the congratulation without performing forgiveness for the absence they have not acknowledged. He treats them as exactly what they are, civil acquaintances with whom he shares overlapping social terrain. What he does not do is let them in. He does not give them the access they used to have. He does not call them when he's in pain. He does not include them in his real strategies. He does not introduce them to the parts of his life that are now precious to him. He does not share with them the inner reality that the small real circle is allowed to see. They are kept exactly at the perimeter that their pattern has earned, no closer, no further. This calibration is not punishment, it is structure. The point is not to make them suffer. The point is to make sure your life is no longer organized around fantasy. The fantasy was that they were in a circle. Their reality is that they are middle distance. The mature response is to treat them like middle distance, not to drag them all the way out into hostility, because that is also a form of distortion. Just to place them accurately where the relationship actually lives. There is a strange, quiet relief that arrives when a man becomes capable of this kind of calibration. He stops being injured by the same people repeatedly. He stops being shocked when they vanish again, because he has stopped expecting them to be present in the first place. He stops being seduced when they reappear, because he has already given them a stable, modest place in his social geometry, and their reappearance does not require him to elevate them past it. He has, in effect, taken away their power to keep cycling him through the old pattern. They can come, they can go, they can return, they can disappear. None of it touches the core of his life anymore, because none of them are inside the core anymore. This is what real growth in this area looks like. Not a man who hates them, not a man who blocks them out of every possible interaction. A man who has simply rearranged the seating chart of his life so that the wrong people are no longer at the dinner table where the real conversations happen. There is a moment that captures this. A man attends a large gathering. He sees, across the room, several people who disappeared during his hard years. They are smiling, talking, laughing. They notice him. They wave warmly. They come over. They greet him with the same energy they used to greet him with before the silence. They congratulate him on whatever the visible markers of his current life have become. They make plans to grab coffee soon. He smiles back. He returns the greeting. He listens. He participates in the small talk. He even agrees in principle to grab coffee. He is not angry. He is not cold. He is, in the most literal sense, polite, but internally, he does not have a single illusion left about what the relationship is. He knows he will not be inviting them into anything serious. He knows that if a coffee happens, it will happen in a kind, surface-level register, with no descent into the deeper waters of his life. He knows that he is allowing presence, not access. And the people across from him cannot quite tell. They feel that something has shifted, but they cannot name it. They keep performing the old warmth. He receives it without resisting. He just no longer participates in it as if it were the real thing. There is no scene. There is no announcement. There is no break. There is only a man who has internally reclassified the relationship and is now operating accordingly. That is sovereignty in social form. Not war, not estrangement, not bitterness. Quiet, internal accuracy, expressed through quiet, external calibration. Once the fake friends have sorted themselves out, the real ones become much easier to see. They were always there. You may not have noticed them as clearly because they did not perform their loyalty loudly. They did not announce their presence the way some of the louder fake friends did. They were not, in many cases, the most charismatic people in the room. They were not the ones who hosted the events or made the jokes that everyone remembered. They were the quieter ones, the steadier ones, the ones whose attention was not for sale to the highest bidder. But during the hard times, they did not move. They did not necessarily save you. They did not necessarily fix anything. They did not always know what to say. They did not always show up with magic. They were not Hollywood heroes. They simply did not leave. They sent the small message. They made the awkward call. They came over even when they did not know what to do. Once they were there, they sat in silence with you. They asked the difficult question. They reminded you, in small ways, that you were not alone in the world. When you look back, what you notice about them is consistency. They did not give you a dramatic gesture and then disappear. They gave you small acts again and again across long periods. They did not need to be reminded that you existed. They reached for you on their own, without you having to initiate. They asked how you were and waited for the real answer. They did not flinch from the heaviness of your life. They did not lecture. They did not punish you for being unable to perform. They simply remained, quietly, where they had always been. This kind of loyalty is in many ways easy to overlook in the easy years. The drama and energy of casual friendships often outshines the steady, undramatic presence of real ones. The loud friends are more visible. They take up more space. They produce more memories. The quiet friends, by contrast, often seem less central, less exciting, less impressive. It is only when the world tilts and the loud ones disappear that you realize that the steady ones were all along the actual structure underneath your social life. They were the foundation and the loud friends were decoration. When you understand this, your relationship with the loyal ones changes. You begin to invest in them differently. You begin to value them more openly. You begin to acknowledge directly what their presence meant during the hard years. You stop taking their consistency for granted. You stop expecting them to remain, regardless of how you treat them. You begin to treat their continued presence as something that must be earned and re-earned by you, the same way you came to expect it to be earned by them. This is a healthier relational economy. You give your deepest energies to the people who have demonstrated, over time, that they are interested in you as a person, not as a function. You invest in their lives the way they have invested in yours. You show up when they have their own hard seasons. You become for them the kind of friend they have been for you. This is not transactional. It is reciprocal. There is a difference. Transactional friendship is I will help you because you helped me, but only to the extent that you helped me. Reciprocal friendship is we both care about each other, and we both behave accordingly, regardless of the precise math of each interaction. The first is a scoreboard. The second is a structure. Real loyalty operates in the second register. There is a man whose closest friend, after 20 years of friendship, never once made a big deal of any of the small things he did. He did not perform his loyalty. He did not advertise it. He simply showed up. He drove the long distance when the man was sick. He called on the anniversaries that other people forgot. He listened to the dark thoughts without trying to fix them. He never asked for credit. When this man finally sat down to acknowledge it, his friend deflected, almost embarrassed. He had not been keeping score. He had not been doing things to be seen doing them. He had been, simply, the man he was. The deeper thanks he received was not loud either. It was, mostly, an unspoken understanding that ran underneath everything. An understanding that the two of them belonged to each other in a way that other people in their lives did not. This is the kind of friendship that, if a man is lucky, he discovers under the rubble of his hard times. It does not look like the friendships in the movies. It does not look like the social media performances. It looks like a small, quiet, unimpressive presence that does not move when the world is moving. It looks like a hand that is still there when you reach for it, even after the silence of others has gone on for years. When you find this, you start to understand what friendship was actually trying to be all along, and you stop confusing it with the loud weather-dependent versions you used to call by the same name. So, what do you do when someone who vanished during your hard times returns during your success? This is the practical question that most men get wrong. They make one of two mistakes. The first mistake is to be too soft, to accept the return as if no absence ever happened, to pretend the silence was nothing, to let them slide back into the same level of access they used to have. This is the path of unhealed niceness. It feels like maturity, but it is actually just an inability to enforce reality. It teaches them that they can leave you in your worst seasons and return for your best ones without any change in the terms. They learn, correctly, that you will continue to provide regardless of their pattern, so they continue to follow the pattern. The second mistake is to be too hard, to erupt at them, to send the long message, to list every betrayal, to explain in detail why you are now permanently closed to them. This may feel powerful in the moment, but it is also often a way of giving them too much of your energy in the wrong direction. You are now spending your time and attention on people who by definition did not earn that attention. You are also, sometimes, performing your wisdom rather than living it. The third way is more measured, more mature, more expensive to them in the long run, even if it looks less dramatic in the short run. When they return, you respond proportionally to their actual demonstrated relationship with you. If they want a polite hello, you give a polite hello. If they want a small conversation, you give a small conversation. If they propose coffee, you decide based on your actual interest and time, not on the relationship you used to imagine you had. If they propose a collaboration, you weigh it on its merits, not on the basis of nostalgia. If they ask for a favor, you grant or refuse it, based on the same standard you would apply to any acquaintance who had been in your life sporadically. You do not lift them automatically back into the inner circle. You do not give them the access they used to have just because they are present again. You require, internally, that any return to a deeper relationship be earned through new behavior, not retroactively granted on the basis of memory. You also do not lecture them. This is important. Lecturing them about their absence creates a strange dynamic in which you become the one who is performing emotional labor on their behalf, processing the relationship out loud while they remain mostly unchanged. It also gives them the false satisfaction of believing that the absence has been addressed, when really it has just been mentioned. Mentioned and addressed are not the same thing. Addressed means changed behavior, demonstrated over time. Mentioned means a brief conversation that lets everyone return to comfort without anything actually shifting. You do not need them to understand what they did. You need yourself to understand what they did. That is the only required understanding. Once you have it, you can act accordingly. You can be polite, even warm, without giving them what they did not earn. You can be present in social settings without including them in your strategy meetings. You can be in their orbit without putting them back into your inner solar system. There is a man who, after years of doing this kind of internal work, encounters a returning person at a gathering. The returning person is effusive. He compliments him on his recent successes. He tells him how proud he is. He asks whether they can catch up properly soon. The man, on the receiving end, listens patiently. He smiles. He thanks him. He says non-committal things about getting in touch when they both have time. He is not cold. He is not warm in a way that promises closeness. He is, in the most ancient sense of the word, cordial. They part. The returning person leaves the gathering feeling that the friendship has been reopened. The man on the receiving end leaves the gathering having committed to nothing. There has been no scene, no betrayal of his own standards, no reinvestment, just the calibrated, accurate response of a man who has internally classified the relationship correctly. A few months later, the returning person sends a message asking for a favor. The man considers it carefully. The favor is not large. He decides he can do it without it costing him anything important, and that doing it allows him to keep the relationship at the level it actually deserves. He does the favor. The returning person thanks him. The cycle of contact resumes briefly. Then, predictably, the contact slows again as the returning person's situation changes. The man is not surprised. He saw it coming. He participated in the pattern only at the level his own standards allowed. He is not bitter. He is not wounded. He is, in some quiet sense, beyond their reach. They cannot hurt him in the same way again, because he is no longer pretending the relationship is what it is not. This is the long-term outcome of doing this work properly. You stop being a man who is repeatedly disappointed by the same people in the same ways. You become a man who knows exactly who he is dealing with and adjusts his behavior accordingly, without theatrics, without bitterness, without a lecture. If this is the kind of social literacy you can feel forming inside you, right steady. Because the man who can read his social field clearly is a man who is no longer at the mercy of his old hopes. Once a man has done all this work, something interesting happens. He becomes difficult to cycle. The pattern of the fake friend is to disappear, return, extract, and disappear again. This cycle requires a partner. It requires someone who, each time the fake friend reappears, agrees to behave as if the cycle is not what it is. The man on the receiving end has, historically, been that partner. He has accepted the return. He has reopened the door. He has played his role in the dance. The fake friend cannot keep cycling without his cooperation. When he stops cooperating, the cycle breaks. It does not break with a fight. It breaks with a structural refusal. The fake friend returns expecting the familiar dynamic. Open arms, catching up, re-inclusion, gradual return to old access. The man on the receiving end provides none of that. He provides civility. He provides politeness. He does not provide depth. He does not provide intimacy. He does not provide strategy access. He does not provide vulnerability. He does not provide the kind of attention that the fake friend was unconsciously fishing for. The fake friend keeps casting the line. The line keeps coming back without anything on it. After a while, they stop fishing in that water. They drift away again, often more permanently this time, because the dynamic that used to make them return is no longer available. There is no longer a stage on which to perform the catching up. There is no longer a willing audience for the warmth they want to put on for show. There is no longer any meaningful access to extract through casual contact. The man on the receiving end has, without any drama, dismantled the entire economy of the relationship. This is power, not loud power, not performative power, quiet, structural power. The fake friends, over time, learn often, without consciously realizing it, that you are not a viable target for the cycle anymore. They will still smile at you, in public. They will still be cordial. They may still occasionally test the waters, but the deeper game they were playing with you has been retired by you, on your terms, without you ever needing to declare it retired. And the most beautiful part of this is what fills the space they used to occupy. The space gets filled with the real ones. Once your inner circle is no longer being repeatedly violated by the cycles of fake friendship, it becomes a more stable, more nourishing, more deeply alive territory. The few people who earned their place there get more of you. They get more of your attention. They get more of your trust. They get more of your time. They get more of your loyalty. They get more of the version of you that is no longer being scattered across people who never deserved it. This is the great quiet reward of doing this work. You do not just lose the wrong people. You finally have the bandwidth to love the right ones properly. There is a man who, after several years of doing this work, looks at his inner circle and realizes that he has not been disappointed by any of them in a long time. They have, of course, been imperfect. They have made mistakes. They have failed him in small ways, but they have not vanished. They have not exploited him. They have not used him. They have grown alongside him. They have become, in some real sense, brothers. Their presence in his life has the texture of permanence. He no longer assumes that all friendships are weather-dependent. He has built a small, weatherproof core. The rest of the world can do what it does, and his core remains. This is what the lesson is ultimately for. It is not to make you cynical. It is to make you accurate enough that you can finally afford to be deeply loyal where loyalty is real. In the end, the deepest lesson of this entire monologue is not about other people. It is about you. It is about what kind of man you choose to be in response to what you have learned. The fake friends who disappeared and returned are not the central characters in this story. They are weather. They behaved according to their structure. The real question is what you have become in light of all this. There is a particular kind of man this experience produces when it is processed correctly. He becomes the kind of man who does not disappear on others when their seasons get hard. He becomes the friend who keeps showing up even when there is nothing to receive. He becomes the brother who answers the call at the inconvenient hour. He becomes the man whose loyalty does not vanish when the other person's circumstances change. He becomes, in some quiet way, the very thing he wished he had during his own hard years. He becomes the one who stays. This is one of the most beautiful conversions that pain can produce. You take the wound of being abandoned and turn it deliberately into the discipline of not abandoning others. Not because you are obligated to, not because you are performing virtue, but because you have lived the silence and you know what it costs, and you refuse to be the cause of that silence in someone else's life, unless the relationship truly requires distance. You become more careful with your loyalty. When you give it for real. You do not give it lightly. You do not give it everywhere. You do not give it to people who have not earned it. But where you give it with depth, with consistency, with a quiet promise that you will not be one of the names that goes silent the moment the other person's sky turns dark. This kind of man becomes rare in the world. People sense it in him. They sense that his attention is not casual. They sense that his loyalty is not for show. They sense that his presence in their life, when granted, is the real thing. They may not always understand why he is so calibrated, so deliberate, so unwilling to scatter his energy across crowds of acquaintances pretending to be friends, but they sense that when he chooses to engage with them deeply, the engagement is solid, and the small circle around him benefits enormously. His real friends never have to wonder where they stand. His partners never have to test the depth of his commitment. His family members never have to perform for his presence. The people inside his fortress know that they are inside, and they know what that means, and they relax into it in a way that is becoming nearly impossible in the modern world. This is what is built, slowly, over years, by a man who has done this work. He has lost the wrong people, and he has not become bitter. He has gained sharper sight, and he has not become cruel. He has rebuilt his social life on smaller, sturdier foundations, and he has not become isolated. He has become, in the most precise sense, trustworthy. So when you sit, perhaps tonight, with the truth of who vanished during your hard times and who reappeared once your sky cleared, do not let the truth turn you into a cynic. Let it turn you into a builder of a more honest map, a builder of a smaller, deeper circle, a builder of a self that is no longer naive about the average loyalty of human beings, but is also no longer willing to behave like the average human being himself. Become the one who stays. Not for everyone, not indiscriminately, not for the people who prove they did not deserve it, but for the small number of human beings whose presence in your life has shown you what loyalty actually looks like. Stay for them in a way no one stayed for you. And in the process, repair the small quiet wound that the fake friends left when they disappeared. Repair it not by waiting for them to come back and apologize. Repair it by becoming, yourself, the proof that loyalty is real, that consistency is possible, and that some men do not vanish when the weather changes. That kind of man is not common. He is precious. He is what the world is short on. He is what your own younger self needed when the silence came and no one filled it. You can be that man for someone else now. And in being that man, you finally close the loop on the silence you once had to walk through alone. Some friends will always disappear during your hard times and return during your success. That is who they are. You cannot change them, but you can change you. And the version of you that emerges from this lesson, properly metabolized, is so different from the version that walked into it, that you will eventually look back at the silence with something almost resembling gratitude. Not gratitude that they left, gratitude that their leaving showed you, finally, who was actually staying. And gratitude that their leaving taught you, in the most permanent way possible, how to be a man whose presence is not weather dependent in the lives of those who matter to him. That is the final transformation. You stop measuring people by whether they were there for you in your storms, and start measuring yourself by whether you were there in theirs. And in that quiet shift, the wound becomes the curriculum, and the curriculum becomes the man. If this monologue gave language to something you have been carrying for a long time without being able to name, leave a like. In the comments, tell me which section hit hardest. And subscribe if you want more monologues built for men who have stopped chasing fake circles and started building the small, loyal, weatherproof brotherhood their real lives have been waiting for. Fake friends disappear during hard times, but return during your success.